Some people who've been critical of Lewis's Narnia books have said that he seems unduly preoccupied with death. A lot of his characters seem to die, and right at the end of the last book in the series, The Last Battle, everybody, or nearly everybody, is dead. Isn't this a bit morbid? Especially with children's books. Isn't this asking children to take on board a lot of experiences and fears and anxieties that they're not really ready for? I think Lewis would have replied by saying, well, death is a fact of life. There's no denying it. We come to the end of things. We come to the end of our own experiences, our own resources, sometimes our own hopes, and we, all of us, come to the end of our own lives. And at the very centre of the Christian faith is the story of a death, a brutal, unjust, horrific judicial murder. Somehow this tells us that faith is useless unless it can look these facts in the face. And again, that's what Lewis is trying to make us do. Not morbidly, but realistically. So in the very first book to be published of the Narnia sequence, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, we have to go through the really quite difficult, quite painful account of how Aslan, the great lion, is captured and killed unjustly and brutally. And then we have to accustom ourselves to the great surprise and shock of the resurrection. The death is real, and the pain is real, and it's not the end. And I think that's very important about Christian faith. Easter doesn't say to us, oh, all the suffering, all the pain is unimportant or unreal, it never really happened, it doesn't really matter. On the contrary, it says this is about as serious, as painful as it can get. That reality, that life, which is at the very, very centre of the universe itself, the life of God, has been through death, has faced and embraced suffering. And it wasn't the end. Life wasn't exhausted by it. Love wasn't squashed and crushed by it. When we ask as Christians, how do we come to terms with suffering, pain and failure? The Christian faith doesn't say, well, there's a theory that'll solve all that for you. It says there's a future, not a future in which it'll all be clear, but a future where God will still be God, a future where you'll find yourself loved, and that really is all that matters. So the story of the cross and the resurrection isn't a story about how things turned out happily after all, in spite of looking rather unpromising on Good Friday. It's a story about the real world we inhabit, a world where people do die, where people suffer horrible injustice, where so many people live lives of, as one great writer said, quiet desperation, and others live lives where they hardly have any opportunity of the freedom and dignity that belongs to human beings properly in the eyes of God. That is our world. And what we have is not a set of words or a set of ideas, but the promise that God does not desert lives that are lived in the shadow of suffering, that God doesn't go away, that no experience can persuade God to give up on this world, that his love stubbornly goes on working through us and in us all the time. And we don't get near understanding that without taking death very seriously. And at the same time, as Lewis suggests in his books, taking death seriously doesn't mean being morbid. Towards the end of one of the Narnia books, The Silver Chair, there's a conversation between Aslan the lion, Eustace, the boy from our world, and Caspian, the prince of Narnia. Caspian is restored to life and to youth by blood that is shed from Aslan's paw as Eustace, at Aslan's command, drives a thorn into it. Eustace can't quite believe this. But, said Eustace, looking at Aslan, hasn't he died? Yes, said the lion, in a very quiet voice. Almost, Jill thought, as if he were laughing. He has died. Most people have, you know. Even I have. We're reminded there that the life of God is not a life that's alien to that suffering, that danger, that threat and risk that goes with death. God has faced it. God has taken it on. And there is still a future in his love, which never changes and never goes away.